In J.R.R. Tolkien's epic masterpiece, The Lord of the Rings, few characters undergo as transformative a journey as Aragorn, the Ranger of the North who rises to become the rightful King of Gondor. His path is not just one of physical trials and battles, but is marked by a series of significant choices that shape both his personal fate and the destiny of Middle-earth. One of the most pivotal of these decisions occurs when Aragorn summons the army of the dead, also known as the Dead Men of Dunharrow, to fight in the War of the Ring. While the power of these spectral warriors is undeniable, Aragorn makes a conscious and deliberate choice not to bring them to the final battle at Mordor. The reasons behind this decision are complex and deeply rooted in Aragorn's character, his understanding of honor, his respect for tradition, and the moral and thematic underpinnings of Tolkien's work. In this extensive exploration, we will unravel the layers of Aragorn's decision, examining the intricate blend of narrative, symbolism, and character development that leads him to leave the dead behind after the Battle of Pelennor Fields. The army of the dead is one of the most eerie and unforgettable forces in The Lord of the Rings. These restless spirits, cursed for breaking an ancient oath, carry a haunting legacy that stretches back to the Second Age of Middle-earth. Their story begins with Isildur, the same king who famously cut the One Ring from Sauron's hand. Isildur, in his time of need, called upon the men of the White Mountains to honor their oath and fight alongside him against the Dark Lord. However, these men, in their fear of Sauron, betrayed Isildur and refused to join the battle. In response, Isildur cursed them, dooming them to a shadowy existence until they could fulfill their oath by aiding his heir in battle. For centuries, they haunted the paths of the dead, a dark and dreaded place that lay between Rohan and Gondor, feared by all who knew of it. This ancient curse and the eerie power of the dead men sets the stage for one of the most dramatic moments in the return of the king. With Gondor on the brink of destruction and the forces of Sauron threatening to overwhelm the free peoples, Aragorn must make a fateful decision. As the rightful heir of Isildur, he alone has the power to summon and command the army of the dead. Realizing that traditional military strategies may not be enough to defeat Sauron's seemingly invincible forces, Aragorn takes the bold and perilous step of leading a small group, including Legolas and Gimli, through the treacherous paths of the dead to seek out the cursed spirits. No living man had ever returned from this journey, but Aragorn's deep sense of duty and his understanding of his lineage drive him forward. When Aragorn confronts the army of the dead and demands that they fulfill their ancient oath, the dead agree to fight under his banner. They then appear at the Battle of Pelennor Fields, turning the tide of the battle in a way that is both swift and devastating. The dead, unharmed by mortal weapons, sweep through Sauron's forces like an unstoppable storm, breaking the enemy lines and ensuring victory for the forces of Gondor. Despite their overwhelming power, however, Aragorn chooses not to bring these spectral warriors to the final showdown at Mordor. This decision is not just a strategic or practical one. It reflects deep aspects of his character, his values, and the overarching themes of Tolkien's narrative. At the heart of Aragorn's choice lies his profound sense of honor and his respect for the binding nature of oaths. The army of the dead is cursed because they broke their promise to Isildur, and their existence as restless spirits is a direct consequence of that betrayal. Aragorn, throughout The Lord of the Rings, is portrayed as a man of deep integrity, someone who understands the importance of promises and the weight of oaths. When he summons the dead, he does so not out of a desire to exploit their power, but to give them the chance to fulfill their ancient vow and find peace. Their role in the war is to honor their commitment and to restore the balance that was disrupted by their betrayal. Once the army of the dead has fulfilled its oath by helping to secure victory at Pelennor Fields, Aragorn recognizes that their debt is paid. To compel them to continue fighting, to drag them to Mordor as a mere tool of war, would be to dishonor both them and the very principles Aragorn stands for. This decision highlights a key aspect of Aragorn's leadership: his refusal to abuse the power he holds over others. He could easily have used the army of the dead as an unstoppable force, a supernatural weapon to guarantee victory over Sauron. However, Aragorn understands that true power lies not in domination, but in respect for others and in the fulfillment of moral obligations. By releasing the dead, he demonstrates his commitment to justice and honor, setting him apart as a leader who values the dignity and freedom of all beings, living or dead. This decision is also a reflection of the broader themes of life, death, and hope that permeate Tolkien's work. The army of the dead, by their very nature, represents death, despair, and the lingering consequences of broken promises. Their presence on the battlefield is a reminder of the dark past and the heavy toll that betrayal can exact, even beyond death. By choosing not to bring the dead to Mordor, Aragorn is making a statement about the nature of the struggle against Sauron. This is not just a war of swords and armies, but a battle between hope and despair, between life and death. The ultimate victory over Sauron must be achieved by the living, by those who have the capacity for growth, change, and hope for the future. To rely on the army of the dead for the final victory would be to place trust in something that is fundamentally bound to the past, to despair, and to death. The dead have no future. Their time is over, and they are bound by a curse that ties them to the mistakes of the past. Aragorn, by contrast, represents the future of Middle-earth, a future that must be built by the living. The living, with all their imperfections, fears, and weaknesses, must face the darkness and overcome it through their own strength and courage. By choosing to leave the dead behind, Aragorn is placing his faith in the living, the men of Gondor and Rohan, the elves, the dwarves, and the other free peoples of Middle-earth who have fought for a future free from Sauron's shadow. This choice is also a reflection of Aragorn's understanding of the corrupting nature of power. The army of the dead, with their invincibility, could easily have become a crutch, a way to achieve victory without the cost and sacrifice that true heroism requires. But Aragorn knows that the ends do not justify the means. The struggle against Sauron is not just about winning a war. It is about preserving the values and principles that make life worth living. By rejecting the use of the dead as an invincible weapon, Aragorn is affirming that true power lies in wisdom, compassion, and honor, not in brute force or fear. This decision also reinforces one of Tolkien's most profound themes: the value of life and the potential for growth and change that life offers. The dead are static, trapped in a state of undeath, unable to change or grow. The living, however, are dynamic, capable of making choices, learning from their mistakes, and altering the course of history. By leaving the dead behind, Aragorn is embracing life in all its complexity and uncertainty, recognizing that the future must be built by those who are alive and capable of change. Aragorn's decision is also a deeply strategic one, rooted in his understanding of the importance of unity and morale among the free peoples of Middle-earth. The army of the dead is a powerful force, but they are bound to Aragorn alone through the curse of Isildur. Their loyalty is not to Gondor, Rohan, or the other free peoples, but to Aragorn's command as Isildur's heir. Introducing such a force into the final battle at Mordor could have had unforeseen consequences for the fragile alliances that Aragorn had worked so hard to forge. The living soldiers of Gondor, Rohan, and the other free peoples were fighting for their homes, their families, and their future. They were motivated by loyalty, courage, and the hope of a better world. The sight of an undead army, terrifying and unnatural, could have undermined this morale, sowing fear and mistrust among the ranks of the living. Moreover, Aragorn understands that the final victory against Sauron must be achieved through the collective efforts of the living peoples of Middle-earth. The War of the Ring is not just a test of military strength, but a test of whether the free peoples can come together to create a world that is free from Sauron's tyranny. By choosing not to rely on the army of the dead, Aragorn is fostering unity among the living, reinforcing the idea that they must stand together to face the darkness. The army of the dead, bound by a different set of rules, driven by a need to atone for past wrongs, do not fit into this vision of unity and cooperation. In addition to the practical and strategic considerations, Aragorn's decision not to take the army of the dead to Mordor reflects his deep understanding of the psychological and emotional needs of the soldiers under his command. War is not only a physical struggle, but also a psychological one, where morale, courage, and the will to fight play crucial roles. The army of the dead, with their spectral and fearsome presence, could have had a negative impact on the living soldiers, undermining their confidence and resolve. While the dead might have terrified Sauron's forces, they could also have instilled fear and doubt in the hearts of Aragorn's allies, weakening their ability to fight at a critical moment. By choosing to rely on the living, Aragorn is empowering his soldiers, reinforcing their sense of agency and purpose, and ensuring that any victory is earned through their own efforts and courage. This decision also has a significant symbolic weight, especially in the context of Aragorn's personal journey and his claim to the throne of Gondor. Throughout The Lord of the Rings, Aragorn's path is one of gradual self-realization and acceptance of his role as the rightful king of Gondor. His decision to release the army of the dead is a crucial moment in this journey, a moment where he fully embraces the responsibilities of kingship and demonstrates that he is a leader who values honor, justice, and the well-being of his people above all else. By releasing the dead, Aragorn is not just fulfilling his duty as Isildur's heir, he is stepping into his own as a king, a leader who will rule with wisdom, compassion, and respect for the living. In conclusion, Aragorn's decision not to lead the army of the dead to Mordor is a defining moment in his journey as a leader and a king. It reflects his deep sense of honor, his respect for the principles of justice and fairness, and his understanding of the symbolic and moral dimensions of the struggle against Sauron. By leaving the dead behind, Aragorn affirms the power of the living to shape their own destiny and reinforces the central themes of life, hope, and unity that run throughout Tolkien's work. This choice, more than any battle or victory, solidifies Aragorn's claim to the throne as a leader who can guide Middle-earth into a new era of peace and prosperity, built on the strength, courage, and sacrifice of the living.